Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today. Um, I am Kristen Wyzak, the CEO and founder of Behavior Works of Southwestern PA. And with me today, I have Melinda Hart. Melinda is an autism mom, and I have had the pleasure of working with her. Gosh, Melinda, it's been 2 years now since we've worked together.
In a couple of years,
Yeah.
yes.
And you're also busy because you have a business too. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. So, hello. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so happy to be here with you. I absolutely adore Kristen and her business and her mission. I couldn't be happier to be here. My business is called Stamping with Heart. It's a paper crafting business. I sell Stampin' Up products, but it's about, card making, scrapbooking, just depending on what you like in the craft space. For me, I am a card maker pretty much, through and through. And it is one of my ways to disconnect and relax and just have something for myself. But I do also like to incorporate Connor because our kids love to know what we're doing, right? So there are certain things that he'll poke in and he's more like his dad. He's more of an outdoorsman. So I have a lot of nature themed stamp sets right now, but there are times that he's like, "What are you doing, mom?" So um, we have fun with it. But yeah, so I'm in all of the places on social media, YouTube, Facebook, all that lovely stuff.
That's
So
fantastic.
yeah,
Well,
it's
I'll
great.
tell them a little spoiler alert because you and I are going to be doing a video about that too. And so
Yeah.
you're going to be posting on your page, right?
Yes.
And I'll have it on my YouTube and my Facebook page as well. Um, so we'll have that content available for you very, very soon. So you were talking about the need to disconnect and get away from it all as you're crafting. So one of the things that you and I have been talking about recently is as an autism parent, when you're asked to go to family events, that can be challenging for you, and you often have to say no. So, talk to me a little bit about, how that's been working lately, what's been going on, and your feelings about everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's been particularly hard because of the pandemic. So it hasn't come up as much. We were recently invited to a family wedding, which we are sorry we will not be able to attend. And I will say that in situations like this, it can be hard to explain or hard for people to understand if they aren't fully aware of the day to day of what you're doing and working on as an autism parent. So, for example, like everything comes from a place of good intentions when you are hearing from people. They genuinely care and they want to know, they want to see you, and they want you to visit, they want to be able to see Connor, and we want that too. And there are ways that we have incorporated that. We have an app that we work with my whole family. It's called Marco Polo, where we can take little videos back and forth and they can interact. So that's a way for us to feel close, even though we're really not in the same physical locations. But with the logistics of a wedding, when you're in a special needs situation, can be extremely difficult. So of course, you weigh all of the factors. Connor has issues in large crowds. He cannot tolerate a mask on his face. If the music is too loud, it just depends. We would be traveling 2 hours back and forth from the location. There's just a lot of variables. Connor, he does, he's a great kid. He has the best time. He knows how to have fun, but it can be overwhelming. So we try to do smaller gatherings. We also try to work with places that we know because Connor is an eloper and he can take off. So for people to come and visit with us, it's a little bit easier. Not saying that we wouldn't go and visit other people, but for something like a wedding, it's just right at this moment, it's just a little too much.
So, what are some ways that a family member wanted to support you, what are some of the ways that they could do it right now?
I think watching something like this, whatever their preferred method is, if they like reading a book, pick up a book and read a book. If you want to come, if you want to come out for a visit, but you're not sure because you know that we're in therapy sessions every day, just ask us because you could always be part of it. The therapist would not mind. You could sit in. That is something that my mom used to do. And you know that, Kristen, because you were schooling her pretty good, right? So it's a family thing. The more people know and understand, the easier it gets. There's less that needs to be communicated if you're visiting or doing something like that. So I would just say if you're curious but you're afraid, don't be afraid. Just ask, come hang out, come see what a therapy session is like. Just get that interaction, and I really think that there would be a lot of progress that way with understanding.
Now, if family members are interested in learning more about therapy sessions, we all use Zoom now for teletherapy because, as you know, working in early intervention, we're switching back from being in person to, Zoom sessions and so on and so forth here in Pennsylvania. So, is it possible for a family member that might be reluctant to come in the house to do a Zoom session with you?
Yes. So this happens a lot. So Connor has up to 10 hours of wraparound services in a week, and all of that is virtual right now. And there are times that we're either being observed or, the BSC, and they just all recently changed their titles. So I apologize that I forget what the new ones are. But, if the BSC comes on, a lot of times they'll turn off their camera so they can observe, but it's not distracting to Connor. Um, but if they would want to participate in the session, they could turn their camera and their microphone on because you can mute yourself, you could turn your camera off, you can turn it on, you can interact. Maybe when it comes to the hello song, which we do every day, they could do the hello song and they can wave and they can just say hi and say, hey, I'm just going to sit in on the session. And then if for whatever reason, and I'm of course talking about Connor, but if it's in, your family situation or a friend or a neighbor or, somebody who's in your life, but you want to know more, you're not sure how to go about it. I don't think it's going to offend anyone, just to say, I'd love to know more. But there are definitely ways. So virtually, it would be really easy. It's a little trickier when everybody's in the house, because the kids want to play, and a lot of therapy is play, and you just don't realize it. I mean, everybody has good days and bad days when you're in class, right? Or if you're doing, and it's exactly the same with that. Mostly you're playing and you're doing puzzles and you're singing songs, and it's not all very serious couch therapy. But there are challenges involved in that, when you're trying to get a nonverbal child to be verbal. There can be frustrations there. And I think it's important for people to see that process and understand how hard the kids are working, and maybe how they're communicating other than, using words.
Yeah, I love those ideas because Zoom, depending on where you live, right, it's easy to chime in there. And like you said, there's different ways that you can do it so it's not distracting to the kiddo, it's not taking away from the session at all. But the family member that's interested in learning more has great insight into what's going on. And I think just giving them knowledge about how incredibly hard that you guys work for those things, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people tend to not be aware, not understand, or maybe discredit how much work goes into some of those milestones, achieving some of those milestones. So, and especially like you talked about through the pandemic, it's been difficult to go out and, have those times that you're out in public and different things like that. So, once we do get back to normal, maybe, and we start going out in public, what are some of the things that Connor might do that people might perceive him as different? And how could they be better at approaching you, or what could they say, or what should they stop saying or doing to make your trips out in public a little bit easier?
Um, well, the playground is a challenge because, Connor is still learning boundaries. And, again, it depends on, the child or children or situation. In Connor's case, because he is nonverbal, he tends to try to communicate through movement or by gesturing or using his hands. So a lot of times he'll run right up to kids that he doesn't even know on the playground and hug, like bear hug them or, grab onto them. And they don't know what's going on. It's kind of like a what's happening type of thing. And, we've had different reactions to that. And, Patrick or I, and Connor's dad, we're usually right there. And we're just trying to, keep him calm and tell him, no touch, say hi, and, get a little bit of that interaction there. But he usually will go right back to it because he's trying to tell the kid on the playground, come over here. So instead of saying, oh, play with me over here, he'll start to pull the child. So, that's a way that I would say is, different from being a neurotypical child. He's trying to communicate in a way that can be a little off-putting, especially to kids. But the one thing about kids is that they are very inquisitive and they are very honest. So they'll just come right out and ask the question, which is refreshing, right? And a lot of times the parents will say, no, don't do that. Don't, they think that they're going to offend you or that their child's going to say the wrong thing. And I would say, don't do that. Let the child ask the questions, we're happy to answer. But it's, you're not wearing a big sign on your shirt that says, my child has autism, he may grab you at the playground. So these are things that we have to kind of explain, or we'll just, in certain situations, we'll just completely avoid it. We just won't go to the playground unless the playground is either empty or there's just one or two people there. We don't really have typical play dates, you know what I mean? But he is getting more interaction, now that he is starting back to in person. We're very slowly rolling that in. And that's been nice because it was very hard during the pandemic. Um, I think the second part of that question was what I know that you said, how would he be different? What was the other part of the question?
Well, you kind of touched on it already. What can other
Okay.
people do in that situation to make it go better, right?
Right.
And genuinely, as a therapist, being on the other side of that, being in person with families, and we get to observe those moments too. And it's refreshing to know that so many parents are open to asking those, having those questions asked. So, because you want to be able to create a network, a support network, right? To be able to have play dates and other parents that you can talk to. One of the resources that we have here in Pennsylvania is called Parent to Parent. And that's something that I've tried to connect with the families that I know with, that at least virtually another parent can reach out and have, that support network. But being in person and working through those scenarios is so, so important, because you have somebody probably local, right? That if your kid gets along with, that's like a magical moment, right? When I was working on social skills and interactions with kids in school settings, there was always that one, I call them unicorns, these magical kids on the playground or in these social settings that would just come up to my kid and they would be like, hey, do you want to play? And I'm like, oh my goodness, we have been working so hard and so long on these social skills. So when you're out in public, have you guys had any of those moments where it just flowed beautifully? And tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I, I'll tell you a few situations with family. So we have family that lives out of state, Connor's cousins, but they are very, they know the deal. They're very sensitive to it. They're very sweet with him, and anytime they get together, they're just right, right back playing, doing their thing. And I think that there are those unicorns that they just know what to do, and his cousin is like that. And then in terms of school, it's a little bit different. There are rules, and he literally just started back, and it's less time. It's not as much time as what he was going before, but it's a start, and we're seeing how it goes. So the notes that we had from the teacher were he's hugging everybody and he can't do that. So it's one of those things about just, we're hugging him all the time in the house. We want him to, be affectionate and express his feelings how he can, but you can't kind of do that out in the world right now. So those are a couple of things that pop right into my mind. It makes it so much easier when you do have, like, when they just came for Easter to visit, and I was able to say to them, Connor has learned some signing. Here's a couple of signs. And the kids are 6 and 10. And they just boop, boop, boop. Okay, eat. Okay, drink. Okay, jump. We have a trampoline. Oh, Connor, do you want to jump? And they would sign and ask him, and he would, yep, let's go. And he would Connor would position them where he wanted them to stand in the trampoline, which was hilarious. And they would just let him do it. So those are all great, great experiences. And we've had the rough ones too, where he accidentally pushed over a little girl at the playground and she cried, and we had to, well, when I say we, I mean Patrick in that particular situation had to calm that down and apologize. So we deal with a little bit of both sides, but he really is learning, he really is adapting to it. We're also talking about getting him a device, like a communication device. And I think that will be helpful too when it comes to those interactions. But yeah, anything that you can sign up for or communicate with, I would definitely recommend it. I have not personally used parent to parent, but I'll check into it.
Yeah, yeah, it's a fantastic. A lot of my parents have, and I'm sure it's different in every state, but parent to parent is really amazing at connecting families that are going through similar situations. When you sign up on their form, you put in the specifications of what you're looking for, another parent that's maybe divorced, separated, multiple children, so on and so forth. You're looking maybe for a person that has older children that are on the spectrum or have other special needs. So it's really amazing that they can kind of tailor that experience for you. Um, so basically, I guess what you're saying, Melinda, is that you want people to be genuinely curious and ask in nice ways, and for family to be a little bit more involved so that they truly know the experience that you're going through and can realize that when you say no to something, you're not just being mean or dismissive or that you're busy with something. It's truly that Connor is having challenges that maybe they just don't understand the full scope of.
Right. And it's important to communicate. They will listen to you if you tell them, I mean, you may get a couple of rounds of, well, why not? Well, I'll help you. I'll watch him. I'll do this, I'll do that. But they don't really understand fully what that means in our particular case. And that's not saying that they're not capable of doing it or anything like that, but that it's a process. It doesn't just happen overnight. Another good example that I can think of was one of my closest friends. When we would go to her house for parties, they would have big, gigantic parties with all these kids, he would have fun for a little bit, but then it would get overwhelming and he would start hitting that meltdown phase. But the major issue of going there was because their house, like the whole wooded area and everything around their house was not fenced in. So he could just, run right over the cliff, or he could run right into somebody else's yard. And if you're in a situation where your child is still small or they haven't had their official diagnosis yet, because this was a couple of years ago, um, and she's a teacher, she has a need, she has an understanding of special needs and all of that. Very, very insightful. But they were all reading me as just being like a helicopter parent. They didn't understand that he wouldn't stop. If I said stop running, he would just keep going. So I didn't tell her right away. And I think it was like 2 or 3 rejected, invitations before I finally said, we can't go outside. The majority of your party is outside. And unless I'm literally holding him the whole time because he would bolt, I can't set him down because he'll keep running. If I get distracted for a half a second because another parent is trying to have a conversation with me, I have to literally just very rudely run away, like mid conversation, and go grab him. And that was too much for me. It wasn't even that it was too much for Connor, it was too much for me. So I finally said to her, it's too dangerous for us. It's we have, like, if we're in the house, we're contained. There are staircases and things like that. You just respectfully ask them to close doors. But somebody else who's running and playing and with a friend and opens up the door to the basement doesn't realize that. They're just doing what they normally do. They're just being kids. And then Connor walks by and he's going down a flight of 14 stairs. Now, I'm not saying that happened, but those are the scenarios that we are constantly running in our minds. So when she got fencing putting up, she called me and told me, I got fencing for the yard. He could come to the parties now. So it's not that she got fencing specifically for him, but because I was able to tell her that, she knew that was going to mean something to me if they wanted to invite us again. So those things make a huge difference in something that wouldn't even be a thought in somebody else's mind.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I mean that's kind of what I talk about in my trainings is asking the right questions, right? So it's a two-way street of that. Sometimes even though as a parent it's difficult to have those conversations, look what a difference it made in your relationship, right? Because she might have thought, well, what happened, or as adults we have all these things, and they just kind of race through our head. Maybe she doesn't like me anymore, or whatever that she might have thought. But to have that open and honest conversation, I think maybe what you're saying is that opened up that friendship again, and you guys were able to really connect. So
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
fantastic.
Connor started an early intervention um, when he was just under 2, and he's going to be 6, and in October. And I have learned to stop being polite, to stop being quiet about. We just have to come right out and say it. If we come to visit you, Connor has allergies. There are so many factors. If you're going somewhere else to stay, if you're going to sleep overnight somewhere, if they have pets, all of these just different things. So, yes, definitely. It's you have I, on our side, it's important for us to communicate if we are rejecting something, if we are saying no to an invitation, if we are, turning something down. It's important that we're honest why we're turning it down. And I think that helps provide some insight, but that doesn't mean we can never hang out. You know what I mean? Like we're not trying to cause offense in any way. We can find another way. So maybe we can't attend 100-person wedding reception, but we could have them over here after their honeymoon, and they can sit and they can visit and they can play with him. They don't have to sit on a therapy session if they don't want to, but just by being here and hanging out, that's how you see what's really going on. That's how you see real life. And you can ask whatever questions you want. I mean, we spend our entire lives, measuring everything. We measure, and everything is structured. So, you do learn that you just need to say it. And you're trying to teach your child to do that too. So it's important that you do what you're teaching them to do. So if you're afraid to speak up, or you're afraid to say, we can't stay at your house, because, just say it, just because it's not going to be any easier on you. It could be traumatic for, your child, or for the whole situation. We had friends that came over to visit, and Connor was having a really tough day. And he started pulling on the girls' hair, and they were very sweet about it, very calm. Nobody yelled or anything, but it was a tough visit. So I'm not saying that it always goes great. Sometimes you have to cut it short. That doesn't mean, that anybody's bad, or that anything was wrong. I think there's a lot of like can'ts and wrongs. And I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding around that. There's so much that these kids can do, and that they can communicate, and that they are capable of, that they really don't get an opportunity to show, because everybody is trying to be polite, or trying not to offend somebody else. They don't say anything to you, but you hear about it later. Oh, this person thought this person said that. This person thinks this about you because you didn't go here, or you didn't do that. And I think that a lot of that can be eliminated just by just ask the tough questions, just do it, just have the conversation.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Well, Melinda, I really appreciate your time today. I know that you have a lot to get back to. You're working, you have your Stamping with Heart business, you have fantastic, wonderful Connor that I had the pleasure of working with. I miss you guys so much. So tell folks how they might be able to get in contact with you and learn more about you or your business.
So if you have any questions for me, I'm on Facebook. If you want to find me at Stamping with Heart, like I said, you can find me. I have a business page on Facebook. I have a blog, stampingwithheart.blogspot.com. And I've written a couple of blog posts about what it's like to craft with Connor, things like that. And then you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and it's Stamping with Heart, HART, across the board.
Okay, awesome. Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Melinda. Take
Thank you
care.
so much. Thank you for everything that you do.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a great day.
You
Bye-bye.
too.